Right. Well, thank you, everyone, for showing up after lunch. So we are going to obviously shake you out of the lunch stupor and get you back into it. So thanks. This is actually filling up really, really well. So, and that's, I think, because we have an incredibly interesting panel that we've assembled, or I should say Danny has assembled with such skill and care. So we're going to go right across here, and we're going to start right. Everybody is going to introduce themselves. So off we go. Sandy.
So I'm Sandy Monteiro. I run Universal Music for the region, and I'm also the head of new business for Asia Pacific. So.
I'm Rob Gilby. I am the managing director of the Walt Disney Company for Southeast Asia. So I oversee all of Disney's businesses: film, television, consumer products, games, interactive, for Southeast Asia.
And I'm Ernest, CEO of Globe Telecom, a leading telecom operator in the Philippines, one of two, and the owner today of the #1 brand in the Philippines in terms of mobile, about 46 million subscribers.
I'm Sunita Kaur, the managing director for Spotify in Asia. And if you haven't heard about Spotify yet, we're a music streaming company.
I'm Lattouf. I'm from Sydney, the Ideaworks managing director as a part of LabStore and Y&R Global.
Good. All right. So we're going to kick off with how to reach the connected consumer, and in Asia specifically, with all the interest that, and a lot of the companies who are like bringing a lot of great experiences from around the globe and applying it in here. So we're going to kick off firstly with Globe and Spotify. So I was lucky enough to be on the board of Spotify in the early days, and we had lots of discussions about pricing models, particularly around Asia. And I'm very glad to see that the two of you guys have figured out a pricing model for Asia. So who wants to start on how that happened and how you are actually changing the way that you're adapting into the region here?
Maybe I'll start and hand it off to Sunita on how this all came about. The Philippines as a country, I think, faced a very similar problem to Sweden when Daniel Ek kind of figured out a business model for Spotify. Music, and Sandy will attest to this, probably gets zero revenue from our country, where everything is torrented and everything is sold illegally through the marketplace for illegal CDs, illegal DVDs, and whatever. So we actually came to Spotify and said, if we can come up with a pricing model that actually prices the experience, right, rather than the music, and for saying that, Sandy, but where it makes it feasible or palatable for the consumer to pay for something, for a better experience of like a Spotify streaming service, versus having to take a Jeep and go and buy and have it sideloaded somewhere, right? And the good thing is that they were able to come up and working with the labels, come up with a price point that I'll let you describe, that I think is the first in the world. And today, you probably know the stats more than I do on how many people we have on the service.
I know. I think it was an incredibly interesting conversation when we first had it, because we'd never done this anywhere in the world. But it really came off the back of starting to launch in emerging countries everywhere, in Asia as well as Latin America. So when you think about how you subscribe to Spotify, you essentially had to use your credit card. But when we started to sort of launch in the Philippines and needed to look at what the payment options would that we needed to offer, it was not just about the credit card. We then started to look at not just monthly, but weekly and daily. And then other options like bank transfers, credit cards, and it's changed our business dramatically, and it's something that we've been able to then duplicate in Latin America as well.
And do consumers can pay via the phone as well?
Yeah, I mean the Philippines is 80% unbanked, right? In a country of 100 million, you got maybe 2.5 million people with credit cards. So the existing model that they had wasn't going to work. And so we created a model that you could use telco load to pay. You could use carrier billing to pay and put it in your postpaid bill. And also, I think we're going to be putting our e-money option there very shortly, which is the GCash wallet. We'll be on that as well.
Yeah.
I think it's a great model of how to take something from overseas and bring it into Asia. It's fantastic one. So, so moving over to Disney, Robert. So, how do you guys see that, you know, from a pricing perspective and a content perspective, in terms of what you do with the movies? Because obviously, you know, torrents, etc., are heavy in Asia, but you guys are doing some of the biggest opening numbers ever in Asia now. So, how do you use Asia? How does Walt Disney view Asia's in terms of pricing and getting to the consumer now?
Well, we start by looking at it differently. We don't see ourselves as a film company or a broadcasting company. We see ourselves as creating compelling consumer experiences, engaging stories, and beloved characters. Now, I know it's easy to say those things, but when you think about Frozen, you think about characters that every little girl wants to have. And I see some of the audience already nodding. You think about Avengers, Age of Ultron, and the reason it has the biggest opening day in traditional theaters is because these stories and these are characters that people want to engage with, they want to own. So if you start with that and you say, how do I get it to the audiences? You're not bound by the platforms. So theaters are still growing out by the world. Wonderful business. It's traditional business. TV has continued to grow, but a lot of the alternatives that have sprung up are alternative ways for people to enjoy that experience. So over-the-top services are newer to some of our markets, and so as they build more legitimate services that can be delivered to the consumers. The great thing about pricing and about packaging is we have a lot of flexibility how we do that because we own our content. So we can have a conversation that in the US may have been with a digital cable provider, but here can be with a mobile operator like Ernest. And we can sit down and say, you reach so many people, and we have these fantastic stories. How can I package up what we have, and how can I price it so more people can afford this, and more people can enjoy it legitimately? And that's the starting conversation. And that means changing business models. It means changing the way we package things. But when you've got great partners, you can do that.
Perfect. So, and Sandy, how do you, I mean, just moving on from that in terms of like where you and Universal?
I mean, the music industry has been the lucky sod that gets to go through all the different technology changes first, whether it was magnetic tape. So we had cassettes long before anybody had videotape or anything else. We had CDs and optical discs before anybody else used them for movies or for computer CD-ROMs. And we're the first to go in digital as well. So, I mean, we get to test the market. We're the canary in the coal mine on whether certain models work or not. The truth is, it took us a long time to actually agree on how to address the digital landscape or the whole connected landscape. I think we all remember the early days in the 2000s where there were so many DRM restrictions on how exactly you experience something that the legal experience was so much worse than the illegal experience. Nobody in their right mind would want to do it unless they had no choice. So, I mean, the good thing for us is, the first thing is that we're starting to have platforms where the experience for the legal platforms is as good as or better than, doing it illegally. So if we can find compelling content and a platform that works, it really is about looking at the markets individually and finding out the pricing points and tiers and structures that actually work for that market. To have one price and say, this is the model that fits everything, okay, for a start, but I think as the market starts to mature and as the players start to understand how they can actually move the consumer upwards into better experiences or better engagements, then I think the structures start to take a bit more of a solid form.
Perfect. So, and we're going to get to Danny as well. And then we're going to go into taking a look at how startups can interact with you guys here and how content providers and how data providers can interact with you guys. But Danny, you come from a retail perspective, which is so much about data, right? You've got to be really understanding, especially about the data that the consumer is generating, because that makes your decision super important.
Yeah, I think when I think about a connected consumer, I think about them as shoppers as well, specifically for our clients and the work we do. And it really is about not necessarily limiting, but moderating the connectedness of a shopper around how they engage brands and retailers through their physical experience and their digital as well. I think it's fascinating how data will start to play such a significant role in that process. And And so as big data was a buzzword a year or two ago, moving forward, and there was an article this morning in the paper locally around how deep learning around data and machine learning is going to be absolutely critical to make the most of the connected consumer, specifically when they're a shopper. We're looking at examples with some of our clients where we can actually track behavior and location through a simple thing like an app, and then have a very personalized engagement when customers actually turn up to a shop. So if I'm to walk through a sports store and have watched my team lose a game on the weekend, you would know that I attended the match, so I was interested in my sports team, so that when I walk through your door, you could almost ping me a notification that says, sorry for your loss, how about $10 off a jersey today? And there's such amazing little triggers on what you can do with data once it's learned and is operating in real time. So we're only starting to see the very beginning of how we connect consumers and then convert our shoppers.
And where in Asia do you see that happening the most? Or where do you see the most reception for that?
Yeah, look, I think the balance is going to be between one single flagship execution versus how it's main spread throughout either a retailer or a brand. We're doing some interesting things with a couple of our clients in Sydney at the moment. I think there are some really interesting things happening here in Singapore as well. So they're the two markets I'm aware of at this point.
And would you, like, from a telco perspective, say, you know, there's lots of retail points, or at least points that you can reach. Would you work with a telco in that respect as well, in terms of, like, have you worked with telcos?
No, not at this point. I think it's really interesting between how we're engaging shoppers on a physical level through iBeacon or NFC or otherwise. It's around making sure that I think there are opportunities to limit the engagement as well. You don't want to be pinged an offer every meter you walk through a physical store. But you also want to make sure that there are real benefits to doing that, because what ends up happening is you end up marketing an app in order to market to people to get consumption and people using your app. Whereas if the app is built in a way that drives benefits to the shopper and the consumer, then that all naturally happens in the background.
Ernest, have you got any plans from a retail perspective to start with?
Well, definitely we have a similar execution because we want to mine obviously the data that we have about consumers. I think there's no industry or company out there than a telco is better placed to profile its consumers, right? From location to income, preferences, and types of even web pages they view, it's all in the telco's hands, right? Obviously, we could turn that into a very vast data pool, and we do for our own offers as well. Like, for instance, when you go to the airport, we know you've traveled. We will hit you with a roaming offer right when you hit the airport. I mean, that's relevant. That's not spam. It's relevance, right? You know, so we intend to do that. We have an ad platform as well at Globe that we work with the Singtel group. There's a company called Amobi. We use it a lot for reselling our products from our partners like Spotify. So we think ourselves as a platform for distribution for the emerging markets, right? Because of the amount of data we have about our consumers, we understand the Filipino consumer more than any other company out there because of the data. And that's what we use to tell Spotify and ask them to change the way they do business in our country, right? We have the retail stores. And our retail stores are, bar none, I think, some of the best executions we have in Asia, where people can experience for the very first time, because the Philippines being an emerging market, not many people have smartphones yet. 35% penetration to date. And going to our stores, they can actually experience the digital lifestyle, right? Whether it's entertainment, music, health, productivity, all that happens in our stores. And so, and the billing relationship, of course. So we got the whole thing complete from profile, distribution, and billing. We can help enable partners and startups and come to the Philippines, for instance.
I have an operator background, but it's so good to see operators finally, and this was always going to happen in Asia, being so much more creative than, or certainly than in Europe. That's for sure. And in the US, I mean, you know, much more creative, much more involved in pricing. That was like not, you're going to see that beforehand. So I have a question to you guys. Now, one of the things that, you know, in terms of reaching the consumer is also, you know, there's, so where I'm going with this one is that, so Walt Disney has a great accelerator program, which is the Walt Disney Techstars program. And do you guys see that you can reach out to startups here in a similar way? Are you thinking of any plans around that in terms of like just spreading the Disney portfolio throughout other startups without, you know, in terms of like content deals, just being able to reach the content out through startups as well as just through the traditional media?
I think there are a couple of parts to that question. One is the accelerator program and how we partner with and invest in startups. The accelerator program was really, really well received, and that was really rewarding for us. Very exciting to know that despite a whole new tech-enabled kind of innovative group, that there's still a tremendous value for the world's largest entertainment company, and that it's not, the future is still optimistic. So we're very, very excited by that. I think we were almost overwhelmed by how much interest there was, to the point we're getting lots of questions from this part of the world. We're very, very heavily vested and invested in Asia and the growth of Asia, and I find it really hard to talk about Asia because there isn't really Asia. There's a series of very significant individual markets that collectively, geographically, sometimes get called Asia. And so there's huge potential. Certainly Singapore acts as a little bit of a hub for a lot of those interests, but it's coming from a lot of the markets in the region. Sure, markets like the Philippines and Thailand, but markets like Vietnam. There's some really sort of progressive innovators who are coming with new concepts. So we haven't structured a program yet, but one thing we do know is that while in our traditional world we've been very successful and we're very proud of that, great ideas or great concepts or great products can come from anywhere. Our interactive business has morphed from Japan. Our Disney Mobile sort of service that we offer in Japan, has been probably our most innovative mobile product anywhere in the world. And we're seeing that in games that we work with, like, for example, Tsum Tsum, Tsumu, as they say in Tokyo, on the Line platform, is so successful. And it's one of our most innovative games we've developed anywhere. So the idea that innovation and startup can only come from our headquarters kind of environment is long since gone. The second, very quickly answer the second part about who we would work with. I mean, my goal is the same goal. How do I connect with the consumers? Whoever's best at doing that. If you've got an exciting new product or exciting new platform, I mean, we talk to all the platforms, especially all the new OTT platforms. And to your point about operators, the operators in Asia, and particularly this guy, are the most innovative operators. I don't see them as mobile operators anymore. No. I see them as relationship managers for the mobile consumers, which is virtually everybody. So it's a whole different sort of ballgame how we work with partners here.
Yeah, no, definitely. So one that's getting very interesting in other markets is segmentation of music. So, we have the big players, the Spotifys and the radios and the Pandoras. Well, let's just worry about just Spotify. It's crushed everything else. But we're also getting segmentation. So there's some very cool new apps which just go after the hip hop segment, which just go after the EDM segment, which is happening like across the board. So you started off with these kind of super ones, but now you're getting these community-focused ones. How do you guys see that happening in Asia? Or how do you see that market evolving? Do you see like communities do you focus like heavily on starting to look at those type of things, like just on K-pop, just on EDM?
I don't think it's something that we particularly get involved in, but we definitely see a need for it because, I mean, even on the Spotify platform, anybody who first goes to Spotify and then realizes there's like 18 million songs on Spotify, they don't know where to begin. So quite early on, we've actually seen developments of platforms like one of the universal ones called Digster, which is probably one of the most successful ones in Scandinavia, that drives almost 70% of all activation of Spotify tracks for us in the region. People want to be guided. It's not just about having a great platform and lots of content. They do want guidance. So if there are apps that particularly service a community, there will be a demand for it. The trick is, how does it become a commercial proposition for that app? I mean, anybody could make a great K-pop app, for example, and it piggybacks off the Spotify platform, let's just say. Spotify makes the money because you have to be a premium subscriber in order to basically have all the content, but the guy that built the app that piggybacks on it, unless there's a deal between Spotify and them, they're not actually going to get anything out of it. So we definitely see a need for it. We, in particular, have a way of using it to drive our own content, which is why we are active in building these things ourselves. We can see the need for it in all different markets, and I'm sure there are people in Asia who will be interested in doing that, but the commercial model needs to make sense.
And so how do you drive that back to headquarters? How do you, it's not Asia, it's the Philippines, it's K-pop, it's cantopop. How do you communicate that back?
Well, I think the good thing is, headquarters understands that very clearly. And I mean, this is something that, Sandy doesn't have to worry about. We worry about it for him. When it comes to segmentation, that is a huge part of what we do, to Danny's point as well. We sit on a tremendous amount of data, which we really, really use to curate music, not just for countries, but for individuals in those countries. So whether you're a K-pop fan or a J-pop fan, or apparently are hitting midlife crisis at 42 when you start to listen to pop music, it's all built for that one listener. And apart from a music intelligence company that we acquired last summer, which has really changed the way we discover and build out browse, we now also hire music curators in each market to sort of give it that human touch as well. So whether we're curating for yourself or Ernest or Sandy, it's really about building based on what that one individual wants.
My own personal I have to set private every time I'm listening to something. I cannot share it with everybody. I cannot share that I love K-pop that much. But Danny, so what are you going to do in Asia? Like, so you're here and you're kind of bringing that experience that you've already got a lot of experience in Australia in terms of retail and digital, which is the online-offline integration, which is fascinating, which is still quite new here. So how do you sort of like get a customer to understand what you're trying to do?
Yeah, look, I think it's really interesting. A lot of what we talk about is the connected consumer and the digital engagement. Speaking traditionally about retail, a lot of what is still going to be the winning factor at the end of the day in terms of conversion or experience, driving a great experience is the human factor. So bringing the human sense of things to life as well. So I think we talked before about how do you make Spotify sticky, and it's so critical that there are exclusive pieces of content that start bringing, I guess, humanizing music. Getting to know the artist. I think things like Periscope are very interesting in terms of getting inside people's worlds now on a very, very intimate basis. And it comes back to some of the philosophy we have around, at the end of the day, independent of all the really brilliant digital interaction with people, specifically shoppers, the human component. At the end of the day, we are humans and we're looking to be wowed. And I think back to your point, compelling enough platforms create that wow factor. My daughter, 2.5-year-old, has a golf set that's branded Frozen. I mean, I would never have imagined that I would buy a plastic golf set for a 2.5-year-old girl in blue.
Well done.
But it was content that drove that purchase decision, and the human nature behind all of that is critical beyond the digital interaction. So maybe not answering your question around the Asia part, but Matt, our president for the region, has some announcements tomorrow that will probably address some of that.
Okay, sweet. Okay, I got to see that golf set. Where's Olaf's head? That, like
It's we've got everything you can imagine. So.
Okay, so we've got some questions coming through as well. On Pigeonhole. So we've got a question here to Sunita and Sandy and Robert. There's a lot of talk about the role of visual elements in promoting content. How does this affect the future of music promotion?
So the first thing is I kind of have a bit of an issue with the concept of promoting content, because it's not promoting content, it is content. We see video as a massive commercial platform for us. It's something that we feel is very compelling. It's very, very engaging. We do feel that there is a need to create opportunities that allow the creators of the content to be remunerated for it. So it's definitely up there. I mean, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to think a little bit differently, not defined by our industry sectors, and trying to think about how's a consumer going to experience something. So if I think of the movie Cinderella that we released into theaters, we got some local artists to re-record, so like Rachel Ango from the Philippines, to re-record A Dream is a Wish Your Heart Make, and re-record the song, create a video, and do a photo shoot as a princess, You know, and then make that available through social media. And it doesn't directly say go and watch the movie, but obviously it deepens that kind of experience. And so it's not so much specifically done as a promotion, because certainly a lot of the social media platforms these days, the rules of marketing have entirely changed.
Yep.
Social media. You don't create and push, because people reject it if you do that.
Correct.
So,
I mean, the thing that's changed in the last 5 years is that the understanding that hard sell doesn't sell.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the whole, how many of you have clicked within the 5 seconds to try and get the 5-second ad off your video? That's hard selling. And going to what Danny's point about, you know, you can't keep bugging a person every 2 minutes. And for us, where we use our content and engaging with brand partners, is to use it as a means of engaging the consumer on a regular basis without selling them anything, but having this relationship, and then every now and then using it as a means to introduce a monetizing option.
But the enjoyment of music, not only has it not changed, it's as strong as ever. Have you ever tried watching a movie without the music soundtrack, or walking into a restaurant without any music in the background? It's a very different experience. So I think the demand for music has not changed at all. And so its interplay between what is music content, visual content, and experiences is even more critical than ever.
Sunita, K-pop is very visual. Going back
Pretty
to
boy
K-pop
bands,
again.
I know.
Absolutely. Not the boy bands, the girl bands, and that's the one thing that Spotify doesn't have at the moment. So how do you bring that, or how are you going to link towards the visual elements of music?
Yeah, so for us, I mean, you know, we're very focused on what we do well, which is audio. But what we have been doing actually very quietly for a few years is building out the visual aspect, but from an original content perspective. So what we do, for example, when we do Spotify sessions, is we will do private recordings, backstage recordings, commentaries from the artists as they're putting together this very intimate recording session for Spotify users all over the world. We have just, in fact, is today Tuesday? Yes, yesterday in the Philippines launched a huge platform, and this is the first time we've actually brought it to Asia, called Emerge. And that is when the whole visual aspect comes into play a little bit more. But again, it goes back to being original, because what Emerge is breaking the next big artist. So we've done it with, if you heard of Macklemore and Ryan Lewis, they were a Spotify artist that we broke many, many years ago. And we want to do more and more of this, so we're going to be doing it in the Philippines over the next 10 weeks. And that's a big part of starting with data and then pushing out the whole visual element.
That's huge. Is it Filipino artists to start with, or is it?
We have 10 Filipino artists. And again, we start with the data. So we look through everything on, you know, this thing called the internet to see what is really bubbling under, reach out to the 10 artists, and then there's this whole machine that powers them. And then we put the power of breaking the next new artist in the hands of the music fans. So when it goes from 10, every week they get voted off into one big emerging artist, and they get marketed to the world.
That's fantastic. Would you guys do something like that here from a Disney perspective, or Universal as well?
I think it's called The Voice.
Yeah.
No, we would never do that. Of course we would.
Definitely have. We have apps that have done that. We haven't done it yet in these markets, but let's face it, music in the Philippines and many of our Asian markets.
But also, actually, so moving on from that, so Maker. So, I mean, just the creativity of Maker Studios. Is that, do you see that happening here as well? I mean, we have Crunchyroll and...
Yeah. Maker is a worldwide phenomenon already. I mean, basically, YouTube's consumed all over the world. Maker's the largest multi-channel network. And so for example, there are more than, well, I keep wanting to not use the data because every time I do, a week later it's out of date. But there's about 880 million views from Southeast Asia on Maker artists worldwide per month. Views per month, 880 million. And they break it down across several areas. So music is one of the key verticals that they have, but they have games, they have lifestyle, toy unboxing, you know. And one of the reasons why Disney bought Maker is the whole space of online video, professionally produced by amateurs, if you like, but it's professionally produced content. It has changed. It's a different form of content. It's like saying you take a a movie for movie theater, and when you create TV shows, it's the same experience. It's not. A TV show is a different form of video content than a movie. Same thing with a short form content produced for Maker. And what's great is it's globally empowering. We have Filipino artists, Malaysian artists, Indonesian artists. So it's an explosive growth opportunity for us. We're working out the business models and how to distribute it and how to widen that. But in terms of empowering, putting the power back in the hands of individual sort of artists in the country is a phenomenal platform.
Ernest, how do you decide which companies you want to work with?
Well, we look at the quality of the product that they bring. If you look at Globe's partners globally, right, we've partnered with the best in their particular field. You know, Facebook for social media, Google for search, Spotify for music, you know, that sort of thing. And soon we'll be introducing a huge partnership with a fantastic studio, which will be in the next couple of weeks or so. So, you know, we believe a lot in partnerships, so we don't develop a lot of stuff on our own, if you notice. You know, we believe that, like I said earlier, we are a distribution platform and a billing platform. And I like what you said, relationship manager with the consumer out there, because we know them the best among all of our, including our partners, right? Because we have the most data. Even the data they have, we have as well, because they share it with us as part of the deal, usually. And so we can profile these consumers really well, right? And so, but again, we know and understand that we cannot be the best at creating music, a music app, a streaming app. You know, these guys have put their whole life, soul, and blood into it in Sweden, right? You can't expect a small bunch of Filipinos in the Philippines to beat Spotify. We're very realistic about that. And that's why we've chosen to partner with someone like them.
So guys, we have a question here which has got the most votes, quite a lot of votes actually, so I'm going to have to ask it. Here we go. So it is, what are some of the key processes that your companies use to determine the best business models for the market?
So
you can answer that any way
you're saying
you
that
want
like we have a roadmap.
Yeah, exactly, which is why I've been staring at this question thinking, okay, but everyone's asking it, so yeah.
I think, I mean, like I said, I mean, the thing about the music business is that we have the unfortunate privilege of testing out all these different things way before any other businesses have the requirement to do so. And we went through a really, really hard time. I mean, Frank, you would have been there in the late 2000s, early 2010s, where we were really lost in the woods. You know, and the whole move to Spotify, I mean, Universal was one of the first backers of Spotify. Yeah. Because we felt that there had to be a new paradigm, right, on how we actually engage. Did we think the model was going to work? Don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But not trying was not an option. I think what we've come to learn from the whole process is that it is not a decision that you make 5 years ago that is the decision that stays with you for 10 years. It's you make a decision, you have some learnings, and then you keep evolving into something that makes sense for all the partners. The one thing that we have moved away from is that, and that's why I made the issue about the visual content, is that we don't see music as being promotional. It has to be valued for what it is, and we will engage with partners that actually look at our content as something of value, and they are vested in trying to make something that works for all parties. So that's how we choose our business partners, and that's how we basically work on the models. It really is about having partners that travel along the same road together, and we make these decisions as we move down the road. But there is no press the button and
Dude,
you got it.
that's an awesome answer. So I'm just going to like tick on this one here because that's like spot on. So, oops, no, we have the. I just pressed. Oh God, I did it all wrong. But we have a question here for you, Sunita, which was has also a lot of votes, which was, how do you promote customer loyalty to Spotify here in the region?
Well, I think it's really about the choice, giving any music fan a choice of how they want to enjoy the music, whether it's, you know, on the free tier or as a premium subscriber. And a lot of the things looking back that we've built has been built for the demand that we see in the market. Like you think, you know, prior December 2013, you couldn't get Spotify for free on mobile. But that was something that the world was crying out for, and we did it. And so every time we sort of make that little step to build towards what a customer wants, I think we get a little closer being more endeared and build loyalty.
Totally agree. So we have just a few seconds left. So I just want to ask one last question to each one of you, which is just a really short answer. So what do you see as the most exciting new platform here in Asia, be that Line or whatever it is, that you think is going to be one of the biggest ways for you to engage with the consumer?
I think for me, the most important thing is the payment mechanism. So as Ernest was talking about the engagement of Spotify with Globe, it moved away from a one type of payment to several types of payment. To me, that's the single biggest development for me in the region.
Robert?
I think there's not a single social media platform per se that's critical. I think it really is the role of the mobile operators, because that brings both payment, billing, and access to all of these kind of platforms, which are increasingly connected as well. So I think the role of the mobile operator is a critical one.
And what are you really excited about?
Well, for us, it's the migration to the smartphone. We only have 35% today in the Philippines that have smartphones. And as people get these devices, it shapes their whole lives, right? Entertainment, connectivity, social media. It changes habits. And that change of habit creates opportunities for guys like us.
I guess Emerge has got to be your...
I think, Emerge data is something that's incredibly exciting for us, because we can use it and share it with so many of our partners, whether it's with Globe or with UMG as we build out artist dashboards and really get involved in other cool things like touring.
I think in a physical sense, almost the frictionless payment methods and engagement, so whether that be through wearables or smartphones or otherwise, I think the conversion from that in a digital sense through, say, operator platforms, through the physical frictionless stuff we've seen, for example, from Disney in the Magic Band. So I think that's a really interesting space.
So I think you have to say congratulations to Ernest, who would have to probably win this panel today, I think, because at the end of today, I've never heard an operator being talked about in such glowing terms. So very good. Nice work, man. So you win the panel. That's it, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so thank you very much to everyone, and thank you very much for coming across and listening today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you. Thank you all for a wonderful panel, and we're looking forward to our next